Hey, everybody. So we're going to be getting into the 5.1 worksheet today. If you guys remember, 5.1 is all about congruent triangles. All right. So I guess just to jump in, let's take a look at number one here because this is a good, I guess, summation of what it means for two triangles to be congruent. So if you guys take a look at, number one, it says copy the congruent triangle shown at the right. Okay. Then label the vertices of your triangles so that triangle CPN is congruent to triangle BIY. Identify all pairs of congruent corresponding angles and corresponding sides. Okay, so if you guys remember, one of the slides from our lesson was this thing, right? When we have congruent triangles, all of the corresponding parts are congruent. Just a reminder, corresponding basically means things that are in the same spot on both triangles. Okay, so, for example, this angle C is corresponding to angle D right here. They're in the same spots. All right, yeah, these are all congruent. So when they go to start this problem, first thing they want us to do is label these triangles. Okay, they're calling this first one CPN. Okay, we can put those letters wherever we want on this first one. So I'm going to put C down here, P up here, and N here. Okay, here's the thing. When I go to label my other triangle, I need to follow that same order. Okay, so this one's called BIY. I need to start with B here, I up here, and Y here. Okay, cool. Now that I have this, let's start by identifying the corresponding angles that are congruent. And everything's lined up for us. So it's, pretty straightforward. We know that C is congruent to its corresponding angle B. P is congruent to I, and N is congruent to Y. All right, and you guys know, since we used one arc here, we had to use two for this, and I meant three on this. Okay, now we can identify the corresponding sides that are congruent. Doesn't matter what we start with. I'm just going to start with the side CP. I know it's congruent to this corresponding side, BI. And let's go on to this one. PN is congruent to IY, and CN congruent to BY. Okay, so big thing just to remember, the order of the letters in the congruency statement, they matter. They mean something, so make sure you get everything in the right spots. Okay, so I'm going to let you guys take care of 2 through 7. If you want to pause the video and try those out, they're giving us our congruency statement here. It's pretty obvious which parts correspond to which. So if you guys remember, I recommended sometimes, numbering the vertices, 1, 2, 3. On this problem, it's probably not necessary, right? We can see that angle E corresponds to O and so on. Okay, when you guys go to do these problems, they're asking for, I guess, just the corresponding part, not its measure. All right, so for example, EF, this side length, all right, we know by just looking at it, it corresponds to OP. So I guess we'll do one together. Okay, it looks like that is going to be our answer here. Segment EF is congruent to segment OP. Okay, that's what they're asking for, no numbers. All right, so cool. Let's keep moving. All right, the next part, write a congruency statement for any figures that can be proved congruent. Explain your reasoning. Okay, so congruency statement, just a reminder, that's this thing right here. All right, they want it for the ones that we can actually prove are congruent. Right now, to prove that two triangles are congruent, we need to see that all of the corresponding parts are congruent. Okay, that's what we must see right now. And I'm emphasizing right now because in the future, we're going to learn some shortcuts. Okay, but for now, we'll focus on all corresponding parts being congruent. I want to take a look at number 11. Okay, so if you guys take a look, we have, corresponding angle D and H, G and F, but we don't have these corresponding angles congruent. Okay, can we mathematically prove that they're congruent? Okay, well, hopefully what you're noticing is these are vertical angles, all right? And we know for a fact that vertical angles are always congruent. So we can actually add in this information here. Okay, but remember, we can only add information that we know a, mathematical theorem for, like a fact. Okay, and then, we have all of the corresponding sides congruent. So yes, this is enough to say these are congruent. So let's write a congruency statement. All right, when we write a congruency statement, when we go to like name the first triangle, those three, letters can be in any order that we pick. Okay, but we need to follow the same pattern on the second triangle. Okay, so let's name this first triangle D, G, E. If you guys notice, I often like to follow the arcs if I have them, but it's not necessary to. Okay, but I can call this thing triangle D, G, E. Okay, let's use triangle D, G, E. Okay, we're going to say it's congruent to the other triangle. I need to follow the same pattern. If I did one arc, two arc, three arc, I need to do one arc, two arc, three arc. I have to call this one HFE, triangle HFE. Okay, so follow the pattern there. I guess last thing, they're asking us to explain our reasoning. Showing all of the corresponding parts are congruent is our reasoning. But let's just write out a little all parts congruent. We'll keep it short and sweet. So I'll say all parts congruent. Okay, that's good enough, at least for this particular problem. Yeah, so I'll have you guys try these out. The reason why I'm hesitating, if I want to teach you something new on number 10, I don't think so. I'm going to leave number 10 where it's at. Okay, I'll let you decide if these are congruent. Okay, so moving along, let's take a look at number 13. All right, find the value of y. All right, I'm taking a look at these problems and they're giving us the measure, y is an angle. They're giving us the measure of some other angles. And, we're looking for it. This is where we need to kind of recall the second thing we learned in the last lesson, the triangle sum theorem, that all three angles of a triangle equal 180 when added together. Okay, the three angles of a triangle add to 180, always. All right, so let's break down number 13. All right, here's my thought. If I can figure out what K is, I would be able to subtract those two angles from 180 and I could find y. Like that's the problem right there. Okay, so I'm looking over at this. I'm assuming that these are congruent triangles. They don't tell us in the directions, and I wish they did, but these are all assumed to be congruent. So you guys can see these are corresponding angles, and yeah, they're the same measure. If this is 45, let's add that over here. This is also 45. Okay, so that's basically it right here. It's not necessary to write out an equation, but just for the sake of it, let's write this out for this particular problem. Okay, so I know that angle y plus this angle 65 plus this one 45 equals 180. All right, and yeah, we can just basically subtract these two from 180 if you want to show that underneath, subtract 65 and 45. Yeah, I said this in the past, but in the future, you can just do this in a calculator. Really, even on this problem, you could have just done it in a calculator, but I wanted you guys to see it. All right, so I'm doing it 180 minus 65 minus 45. I'm getting 70. All right, so I guess I'm going to move over here. I'm going to say, all right, angle y equals 70 degrees. Okay, so yeah, use your corresponding parts to find missing angles. That's kind of the theme of all of these problems here. All right, number 15 throws in some variables. We're going to do one that has us making equations and solving. So I'll leave that to you. Let's keep moving. Okay, number 16, I'm not going to do this problem, but I just want to point out, it's asking you to graph the triangle with these vertices. You're going to plot these 3 points and, connect those dots and it'll create a triangle. Then it wants you to graph another triangle that's congruent to this one. So after you get that triangle, basically you just want to plot 3 other points that are the same distance from one another and make a congruent triangle. It's a pretty straightforward problem. Okay, so I'll leave that to you. Last one, number 17. Right, this one is telling us that we have congruent triangles. Find the values of A and B. So there's 2 things on this, A and B. So let's start with just looking at A. All right, so A is this angle T. Okay, I'm just going to put an arc around that whole thing, even though that looks a little weird, but there's angle T. My first thought is, okay, I know I can set that equal to its corresponding angle. What is the corresponding angle to angle T? Okay, you might be able to tell by just looking at these. Let's make sure, though. Okay, let's number off these vertices and make sure we know what corresponds to what. So let's start with this one, HJK. Okay, 1, 2, 3. H1, J2, K3. Okay, and do the same thing with this TRS, 1, 2, 3. TRS. Okay, this now tells us all of our corresponding parts. I can see that this angle T with 1 next to it corresponds to this angle H with 1 next to it. All right, so let me make it red. Okay, so those are corresponding angles which are congruent. Let's make our equation. 6a minus 3 equals 51. All right, and yeah, solving this. Hope you're doing good. If you have trouble with solving, please call me over if you get stuck, because yeah, it's important. So we got 6a equals 54, and then dividing by 6, that's going to go in 9 times, right? Okay, so there's half our problem. There's A. Let's take a look for B. Right, B is also dealing with an angle, this one right here. All right, and I already numbered them off. I know that angle 3 corresponds, K corresponds to angle S, which has a 3 next to it, but I don't know what angle S is. Okay, so how do I go about finding this angle is kind of the question. Well, it was the same idea as before. I know that, these 3 angles add to 180. All right, here's, something to realize. Instead of thinking of this as 6a minus 3, let's think of this angle as 51 degrees, right? We know this thing's 51 degrees. All right, so there are my numbers I can subtract from 180. You can just grab a calculator. I'm going to write it out. 180 minus 83 minus 51. Okay, that's going to give me the missing angle. So let's see. Looks like 46. Okay, so there's the measure of angle S. I'm just going to put it on the outside here. So 46, you want to draw a little line in there. Okay, so there are my corresponding angles. Now, again, I can set those things equal. So 7b minus 10 is equal to 46. Okay, let's do some of this in our head. Adding 10 to both sides, that gives us 7b equals 56. Dividing both sides by 7, I know 7 goes into 56 8 times. Okay, be careful with doing stuff in your head, but if you feel comfortable, that's fine. Okay, cool. So that's congruent triangles. So, go ahead, try out some of those other problems. I would say, the ones, if you have questions on, this section here is a little strange. Talk to me if you get stuck on any of those. And if you have any questions on 8, 9, and 10, whether they are in fact congruent, those are also decent questions. Okay, so yeah, I'll see you guys. Bye.